Well, to talk more about Vladimir Putin and Russia's place in the world, I'm joined by Paul de Quenoy, a specialist of Russian history and modern Europe at the American University of Beirut. Thank you for joining us tonight. Now, Vladimir Putin portrays himself, doesn't he, as someone who's really strengthened the country after the humiliation of the fall of the Soviet Union. And today, Russia is a nuclear power. It has a great say over what happens in the Middle East, not to mention it provides Europe with a lot of its energy. So is he right? Has he made his country more powerful?
Oh, certainly he has. And one of the great paradoxes of Russia is that the Russian economy has shrunk in relative terms to other powers. In 2012, it was probably the 10th largest economy in the world, and now it's more like number 15. The economy of Russia is smaller than the economy of Spain. Yet nevertheless, Russia is able to punch far above its weight because it has access to international institutions, particularly a Security Council veto in the United Nations. It has the willingness and the ability to send armed force into the Middle East, into Syria. It was capable of annexing Ukraine without much Western opposition. And Putin is a very skilled strategist. He knows very well how to take advantage of perceived weakness in the West, particularly under the Obama administration. This was a very easy thing for him to do because Obama did not have the guts, frankly, to oppose Putin on most of the things he did while he was in power. How that will play out under Trump is something else that we'll have to see in the future. But for right now, it seems like he's talking about using that power that he has gained to create some kind of deal. He's talking about arms control immediately after he's reelected. And it's a very true thing, Laura, that after these types of elections, after American elections and even after Russian elections, there's always talk of some kind of reset of relations. It's happened no matter who the new president of the United States is, and it happens every time Putin's elected, and also when Dmitry Medvedev became president in 2008.
I mean, having these disputes with the West are almost central to Putin's popularity, aren't they? He likes to, on one hand, portray himself as a strongman, but on the other, he very much paints Russia as a victim of other countries and what other countries are trying to do to Russia. NATO, for example, the United States imperial project, as he calls it. You know, all of this combines to help Russians believe that they are under attack from other countries.
Well, not exactly under attack, but potentially under attack. The idea is that the West and its institutions and America and its allies have actively surrounded Russia, that they're trying very hard to keep the Russians oppressed. A large number of Russians believe that if it weren't for Putin, Western countries, perhaps including even the United States, would invade Russia and turn them into their slaves. This builds on a long-term, even into Soviet and imperial times, trajectory of portraying Russia as a weak country that is very, very vulnerable to more sophisticated Western societies. And as a result of this, Putin is able to create this image of Russia as a very, very strong country. And also you see this in official ideology. There is a great emphasis in Russia today on creating this idea that Russia is distinct from the West, that Russia has a different system of values, a different system of traditions that make it not just different, but actually superior in some ways to the West. Putin's dialogue with the West often is stressed in terms of its decadence, its cultural decadence, its political problems. And if you follow especially Russian state media, state-controlled media outfits like Russian television, they absolutely do go after everything that they can find in the West to criticize. And opposing Russia to that is something that works very strongly for Putin. It plays very well with the Russians. And as you know from the public opinion polls, about 80% of Russians do approve of Putin.
So, but how sustainable is that, 18 years on, as a political system? Would Russians accept Putin as a president for life?
Well, the problem is, of course, is that Putin is, you're right, the linchpin of this system. Without Putin, and he's now 65 in a country at an age when men usually die, without Putin at the helm, it's very, very unlikely that this can be sustained. You need that kind of personality. And again, one of the paradoxes is that for Putin to succeed, he had to sideline almost anyone else who could potentially have been an alternate leader. As we saw in the election campaign, the major opposition leader, Alexei Navalny, was barred by administrative procedure from running in the election. The next most important opponent, who got only 11% of the vote, was Pavel Grudinin, a communist. These are not people who can ever challenge his power or authority. And of course, as your story in the lead up to this interview said, that Boris himself, the other credible liberal leader, was murdered in the shadow of the Kremlin. So without Putin, no one knows what's going to happen. And of course, there's a big question about who will succeed him. He's in for another 6 years. He'll be 71 at the next Russian election in 2024. He has hinted that he might be tired, that he doesn't want to stay on until he's 100 years old or however long he lives. But I think we have to deal with the fact that Putin is Russia's leader and will be for the foreseeable future.
Paul de Quenoy, thank you very much indeed.